And welcome to another edition of the New Sports Outlaws podcast. My open is not as long this week, Dan, because my voice is still not recovered. Why, I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely fine. But a lot happened, Dan, since the last time we have met. And most of it centers around football. So even in the off season, football is king. How are you this week?
Yeah, good, Neil. Yeah, I know we said about a month ago now. So it's about a month since the Super Bowl, or maybe even a little less than a month. That we said we were pretty much going to stop talking football. We were like, it's a dead time, it's whatever. Maybe we had like a week of not talking football, maybe. I think that week after, but last week we talked football. Now all of a sudden, free agency, franchise tagging has been off, been going crazy, a lot more interesting than baseball off season and baseball spring training. But yeah, so we have a lot of football to talk about, and football is king, like you said. So let's get started.
So, my first category is rather small. I kept together a notable list of players who were released. A couple of these guys have also already been signed, but since we were on, some notable names that were released were Miles Sanders, Kyle Juszczyk, Von Miller, Gus Edwards, Jonathan Allen, offensive lineman, Evan Ingram, Joey Bosa, Tyler Lockett, anybody there that you see that you want to mention? Talk about somebody that's going to be interested in making an impact for one of these good teams.
Well, I look it up for today, and you brought up one of the names that actually just got signed, I believe, today by the Broncos. Evan Ingram just got signed by the Broncos earlier today. And 2 years ago, I remember him kind of had a great, fantastic year with the Jaguars. I want to say he had over 100 catches. I want to say he had 1,000 yards from the tight end position, and he was everyone's fantasy darling, including mine. After 2 years ago, of course, I end up drafting him in fantasy, and he just goes in the toilet. He gets injured, all that stuff. But knowing he's kind of out of that dumpster fire in Jacksonville, going to a more offensive-minded head coach. I mean, I guess Doug Peterson is too, but we all know Sean Payton's on a different level. And kind of going with Bo Nix there. I think Evan Ingram is actually a huge signing for them to go along with Cortland Sutton and a couple of those young receivers they have in Denver. And I think Evan Ingram can kind of go back to what he was 2 years ago and really make a huge impact with
Yeah,
Denver.
yeah. Oh, the one I didn't mention was Cooper Cup, who got released earlier today, but we kind of all had a feeling that
Oh
that
yeah,
was coming.
Devontae too. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
and then there's two names on this list. One of them was released by the new team of this other one. Joey Bosa is signed by the Bills. The Bills let go of Von Miller. For me, if I was going to pick a name on that list, I would have keyed it on even before the Bills signed him, was Joey Bosa because he still wrecks the passing game for the other team. And Von Miller, when he came back from injury, just didn't have it. I believe that Joey's got a lot left in the tank, and I think he can make a huge impact on that Buffalo Bill defense, which we said was probably their weak point of their team. So I think that could be a big change for them.
Yeah, it kind of seems like they just kind of substituted one out for the other because I know when they signed Von Miller, he was like it was some crazy contract that came out of like nowhere. Guess to kind of just to get him on the team, and he had his couple of years. I know he had a couple of really good moments for Buffalo, but it seems like they kind of just swapped him out for someone a little cheaper, who's normally always injured. I mean, he's not the best Bosa, and he's not his brother Nick Bosa, but he still, when healthy, which is not often, a quality pass rusher.
Yeah. So that was a short list. This is a shorter list of things that happened since we were gone or since we were here last. Was a list of traded players. So you had C.J. Gardner Johnson was traded, Dorian Thompson Robinson was traded, Kenny Pickett, Laramie Tunsil, DK Metcalf, Christian Kirk, Geno Smith, and Joe Tooney. So, of all those names, Dan, who do you think there makes the biggest impact? Please say Dorian Thomas and Robinson.
You know, he was maybe number not on the list, actually. He definitely wasn't on my list at all. But if the Pittsburgh Steelers had a quarterback right now, I think I would say the DK Metcalfs of the world. I mean, that's a crazy ego wide receiver room between DK and Pickens. So that's going to be crazy. But I'm going to pick Laramie Tunsil for left tackle for the. It seems like the Commanders. They're like, holy crap, we made it this far. And like they're kind of going for it now. They seem to be kind of pushing their chips. They traded 3 pretty valuable picks, and I believe a swap for something next year for Laramie Tunsil. So they got their left tackle who he's still solid. I know last year he had a lot of false starts because of that new rule with offensive linemen where they had to be on the line. And I know he struggled with that last year, but it seems like the Commanders are kind of going for it now with the cheap Jaden Daniels at quarterback. And I think their left tackle, they kind of shored that up.
Yep. Um, I concur with the name I would go on the name on that list. I would go with it would be Christian Kirk. Tank Dell. I don't know if he ever comes back, let alone comes back at any type of good point of that season. You got Nico Collins on the other side, and Steph Diggs is gone. I think Christian Kirk could be in for a massive fantasy year, and I know we'll get into that as the year rolls on. Our friend Rocco is already asking me, "Is it mocking season yet?" So we will get into that later on. But yeah, I think Christian Kirk could be in for a huge season stat wise next year. And then the third category I had for the NFL, we did traded, we did sign. I'm sorry, we did traded, we did released. Let us talk about the signed. I put together a list of signed players per position. So let's tackle the quarterback first. You have Sam Darnold headed to Seattle. You have Justin Fields headed to the Jets. And you have Daniel Jones headed to the Colts. I put this list together earlier. I don't know if I missed anything because was teaching and coaching. But those are the 3 names I have on my list.
Yeah. And just with the trade thing, did you mention Gino to the Raiders? I'm not sure if you
I
mentioned
did.
Gino.
I
You did.
mentioned his
Okay.
name.
Whatever. I'm looking at quarterbacks my list now. Um, I think I'll let you tackle. I'm not sure if you're going to tackle the Daniel Jones angle of it. I'm not sure if you were going to do that, but I was always a big Justin Fields supporter, and it seems like he really's not had a fair shake. I mean, the NFL knows something or the teams know something that we don't, or at least I don't. I've been a kind of huge supporter, and I hope with the Jets now, it looks like he's obviously the starter. I think that was one of his things that he kind of asked of the Jets, like, am I pretty much day one starter? And I think they did that, and I think they overpaid for him a little bit. But I mean, $20 million a year for a quarterback for only 2 years—that's not really too much. Um, but I want to see Justin Fields. Hopefully, I mean, I know it's the Jets, and that's kind of where quarterbacks go to die lately. But I would want to see Justin Fields get a fair shake over there, and with Garrett Wilson over there, some still got decent talent over there with the Brees Hall, a young tight end over there too. I hope Justin Fields can, get a whole year under his belt and hopefully have some success under Aaron Glenn.
Agreed. I guess the Daniel Jones thing is just funny. I look at it more from an Anthony Richardson standpoint than I look at Daniel Jones, and they basically looked right in his face and said, "If you can't beat Daniel Jones, then you're done." And they gave Daniel Jones a lot of money to possibly be the backup. If he doesn't beat out Anthony Richardson, you got a $14 million backup, and I guess even if Anthony Richardson is good, he can always get hurt, and you need a competent backup quarterback. And Daniel Jones, I guess, on this landscape, I would also consider him a
What they
competent
gave
backup
him, good for him.
quarterback. But it's a lot of money.
That's what they gave him. Good for him.
Yeah,
Was it 1 year? Was it 1 year thing?
1 year, 14 million.
Wow, that you don't see those often.
No,
Yeah, I know there was big issue. I know they talk about on the radio, at least on the fan. I know Tiki's a big with this. Anthony Richardson not really liking football, not liking the grind of football, and not liking all that work that has to go into it. And I mean, I thought, I mean, obviously another fantasy guy from my last year that kind of tanked up, and I hope that, I mean, if he's not into football, that Daniel Jones might take his job, and because I still think he's an okay quarterback, but
yeah,
if he can't beat him out, though, you're right, it might be over. He'll play back up for the rest of his career or
yeah.
whatever.
And that coach has shown he can coach quarterbacks because, I
Sure.
mean, he got a lot out of a fossil of Joe Flacco. I
Luka.
think he can get something out of Daniel Jones. So let's move on to the running backs. Dan, you had Aaron Jones staying with the Vikings, re-signing. You had Harris signing with the Najee, that is, signing with the Chargers, and you had Javonte Williams. With everything going on, it literally escaped my purview until I did my research today that Javonte Williams signed with your Dallas Cowboys.
I'll take that one. Just because, and it just came over the my feed at least a couple hours ago. Rico Dowdle actually signed with the Panthers, so he's not even on the Cowboys anymore. So I'm assuming Javante is kind of has the lead over there. But I mean, with the Cowboys, it seem like they're more bargain hunting again because of all the top heavy guys that they overpay. DeMarcus Lawrence actually went to Seattle also. They just seem to be losing guys, but I'll take Javante. He's a quality back. He's a good receiving back. He'll be a decent acquisition for them. But the Cowboys are kind of bargain hunting right now and trying to find out whoever they can get with everyone they're trading and losing. Zach Martin just retired. They got a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Jake, I mean, look, I was going to say something. I'll keep it until the next talking point. Wide receiver. I'm just going to move on. Wide receiver. I'm going to break it up into two separate lists because there's 13 names on my list, and you may have heard of something that happened today after my research, possibly. So Chris Godwin stays with Tampa. Devontae Adams goes to the Rams. Hopkins goes to the Ravens. Hollywood Brown stays with KC. Darius Slayton stays with the Giants, and Josh Palmer stays with the Bills. Out of those, which one shocked you the most?
Which one shocked me the most? I would say, that shocked me the most. I would say the one where Hopkins kind of went to the Ravens. Just because Hopkins, I mean, unless he's gotten some kind of like revelation that he's definitely not like the guy anymore, he's not really going to be high up on their depth chart as they kind of go into the year between Zay Flowers. They still have the two tight ends over there. They obviously still have Derrick Henry for the year. Lamar Jackson's going to dominate the ball. I figured unless he's just kind of chasing a Super Bowl, which I guess he got traded to KC in the middle of last year, but I don't see him really getting too much like run over there in Baltimore. I mean, he'll be on the field because he's a good red zone target. Maybe that's what they're trying to use him for, even though they got some big tight ends over there. But I would say DeAndre Hopkins just a little surprising. I know he's on the way out, and
Yeah.
maybe he was just looking for a soft landing spot, not go like a winner. Maybe he's trying to get a Super Bowl. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Adams to the Rams only to me was a surprise because we didn't hear that. We also I think everyone and their mother thought that Adams would wait to see what Rodgers did and then maybe follow him or then maybe move on. But for him that quickly going and taking Cooper Cup's spot in LA was crazy. And Godwin is probably a shock too because all the reports that I hear is New England blew out Tampa Bay's offer and he still decided to go back to Tampa Bay. So I think those are all big. The guys staying with them, I was kind of hoping you said Darius Slayton staying with the Giants was a shock. But I'm going to mark
I
it on
mean,
here. Who cares? All right. So these next seven guys, pick one that you want to talk about. You got Demarcus Robinson going to the Niners. You have Westbrook Ikine going to the Dolphins. You have Donnie Brown, who came on strong for Washington last year, going to the Jags. Tutu Atwell stays with the Rams. Matt Collins goes with the Pats. Zay Jones stays with Carolina. And I'm sorry, not Carolina, Arizona. And Justin Watson, who is a wide receiver, I thought he was a tight end, went from KC to Houston. So give me somebody you want to talk about on that list.
I don't want to talk about any of them. They're garbage. What do I want to talk about them for? What the heck? Well, you didn't mention one guy. Justin Watson was a tight end. He definitely was a tight end. And all of a sudden, I remember you had him in fantasy purposes, didn't you? And then I remember he was a backup to Kelsey. I remember there was one week where you needed a catch and you didn't get a catch. I don't. Westbrook and Kine will be another deep option for Tua. I
Yeah.
remember
Oh yeah.
against for the Titans, he pretty much had a 7 week period. He did have a touchdown, but he was catching like two balls for like 60 yards and a touchdown.
Yep.
So I mean, he wasn't doing crazy amount. He did have a good run, fantasy wise. I know that's kind of how we live fantasy wise, but he's another one that can kind of be added to along with all the weapons that we all know Miami has. So he's definitely another speed guy, slot guy that they'll be able to kind of another little weapon for Tua. Could be sneaky good.
Yep.
Otherwise, that's all I
And,
got.
and honestly, I'm gonna quickly summarize the tight end spot. Nobody of any value moved anywhere. You had Juwan Johnson stay with New Orleans. You had Gesicki stay with the Bengals. You had Ertz stay with Washington. You had Hooper stay with New England. And you even had the backup to Ertz in Washington, stayed in Washington. So nothing of note here for tight ends. With defense, you had some significant signings. I didn't name all of them. There's tons, and there's so many bit players. But I put down Sweat went to Arizona from Philly. Bosa obviously went to the Bills. DJ Reed went to the Lions from the Jets. And as much you're going to make fun of me about this, the kid Holland, as I researched, was apparently the best safety that they were saying on the board. So the Giants get Holland from the Dolphins.
Yeah, no, there. That's a good time. No, that was a good one. I mean, you gotta. I mean, it seems like the way is to kind of overpay these guys a little bit, just to kind of get them signed for a couple of years, and then it seems like then they just release them when the cap hit gets too much, and then they kind of go younger from there. But yeah, the Giants are building up. That's what they're doing. They're building up. They got to build that defense. Their defense is still on the weak side. They got a decent line. I know the defensive line had a nice improvement last year, but that secondary, especially, um, I forgot that young corner that you have, who's that kind of struggled last
Thanks.
year. Yeah, Deontay Banks. I know he had his issues last year after being a first round pick, I guess 2 years ago. But that secondary needs to be shored up, and they're taking steps, and they're at least active. That's what you want to see from your team, at least active during free games.
Yeah, their secondary is very young too. I think it's like two 24-year-olds, a 25-year-old, and two 26-year-olds. So they're very young. They're building. I like that part of what they're building. I'm not too sure what they're doing with quarterback. But Dan, we are going to play a game. You ready to play a game? I wish I had the game show
Do we
music
have
ready
music? Okay.
for you. But I'm going to give you at least 3 or 4 players. We're only going to do offense here. 3 or 4 players that are still left on the board. You're running a football team. If you had to pick one from each of these positions, who would it be? And
Please don't put Aaron Rodgers. Please
for
don't
this
put Aaron
game, we're going
Rodgers.
to pretend Aaron
Please don't put
Rodgers
Aaron
is
Rodgers.
officially released. So let's say for quarterback, Aaron Rodgers,
No.
Danger Russ, Winston, and Marcus Mariota. Dan, give me one of the four you would take for your team.
I'm taking Jameis Winston. I am not taking Aaron Rodgers at all. I can't wait. Bart Scott, I can't
Can't wait.
wait until Aaron Rodgers signs with the Giants, and we're going to talk about it next week, and I can't wait to go in on that. Anyway, Jameis Winston is pretty much the only leader that is part of that foursome that is there. I don't want to hear about Dangerous doing push-ups on an airplane. I don't want to hear that. Jameis Winston, he could still chuck it. He might chuck it to the other team half the time, but he could still throw it. He made Jerry Judy look like a superstar towards the second half of the Cleveland Brownies. So I'm taking Jameis out of that foursome. I'm not taking Marcus Mariota, dangerous Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers. I am taking Jameis all the way.
Okay, so quickly, I the only time, 2 things. One, if we get Rodgers, the only way I want Rodgers is if you're going to tell me one of the quarterbacks is with us, and don't tell me Sanders. I'd rather you tell me we trade back into the first round for Dart, or we take Jaden Miller in the second round. I don't want Shador Sanders. I've been adamant about this since the beginning of our time.
Sure, sure. But the last thing you're going to want, if Aaron Rodgers is going to be a backup, is him going on McAfee every single Tuesday as a backup quarterback talking about your team. That is not going to happen and not going to be good.
I don't think it's gonna be good. But the other thing I had to say to you was, um, real quick side note, and I know we're New York sports here. What the hell does Pittsburgh do? If Aaron Rodgers does, I think Aaron Rodgers going to Pittsburgh. But if Aaron Rodgers does go to the Giants, do they bring back? Are they literally forced into reunion with Russ? What else are they doing for a quarterback? Are they calling up Arizona to see if Kyler Murray's available? Like, I don't know what they're gonna do.
I would hope they bought in DK Metcalf with a plan. I mean, you already got two head cases with Metcalf and Pickens. If they don't get a quarterback, it is Mike Tomlin. That's going to be Mike Tomlin's last year because not necessarily because it's his fault, but because his two receivers are going to go go. He's going to go crazy.
I know you said that Jameis for your team. I think Jameis for Pittsburgh, he's got a big arm. He throws the long ball. You got DK and Pickens,
Pickens.
and I mean, with how crazy positive Jameis is, can you see him trying to talk Pickens down from one of his rage attacks with DK? Like, it's not baby. We just got win.
Fryermuth is
Oh,
still a good tight end over there. Still got a good Fryermuth tight end. So
so
you got
yeah,
weapons over there.
let's move on to our game because we got a little side note sports stuff there. But running back, J.K. Dobbins, Nick Chubb. I had Rico on here because he wasn't signed earlier. So we'll just go J.K. Dobbins, Chubb, and Hunt. Pick one of the three.
Um, it seems like I don't want to go this way. And I don't think he's even going to be assigned before the year begins. I'm going to go Kareem Hunt. Just because of the injury purposes, it seems like he stayed relatively healthy the past few years, and he's been really productive. I know he was really productive for KC when they were having their issues with Pacheco being out. I know Dobbins actually had a really good year last year. He actually stayed relatively healthy. Um, I could see. But he's been hurt too many times. In terms, more is mind health. Obviously, Chubb is probably the best running back there, definitely by far. Um, but Kareem Hunt brings a lot of stability to a running back room, and I'm just gonna take Kareem Hunt for that reason.
I got you. Okay, wide receiver, Cooper Cup, Amari Cooper, Steph Diggs, or Deontay Johnson.
Cooper Cup. I definitely think he's got still got some gas left in the tank. Definitely, especially as a slot guy, he's kind of like that Wes Welker type, Danny Amendola. I mean, he's probably definitely a lot better than they were, but in terms of his shiftiness and his ability to change speeds really quick, it's not. He didn't really get released. I mean, because of he was just terrible. He kind of got released probably for salary cap reasons, and there may be something else, but
Yeah.
I still think he can be a really above average receiver on any team.
I think just by process of elimination it has to be Cup, because Amari Cooper to me looked old. I know maybe he didn't pick up the offense in Buffalo, but he looked old to me. Steph Diggs is older and he just ripped his knee apart. And Deontay Johnson's a malcontent who wouldn't play for Mike Tomlin, which everyone loves. So yeah, I would take Cup too. Tight end, I only got two names for you, and he signed already. But would you take Evan Ingram or Tyler Conklin? I'm pretty sure I know your answer.
Yeah, Evan Ingram's
Yeah.
he's poised for a big year, and I know when they drafted him, it was kind of a make fun of thing, and they said, "Oh, he's a great athlete, he's a wide receiver, a tight end." Kind of broke out in Jacksonville. I think with Sean Payton, Evan Ingram's would have a great year.
Yeah. Just quickly touching in on our two local teams. The Jets brought in Fields, which we talked about. I've been hearing, listening to the radio and doing process of elimination. You think they're going to run an RPO type offense, which might be really good. You got Braylon Allen, which everyone seems to love, have my dynasty team. You got Brees Hall. You got Justin Fields. He played in college with, who was his wide receiver?
Aaron Wilson.
Garrett Wilson. So I wanted Justin Fields for the Giants. I don't know why they never mentioned him, especially with him being a mobile quarterback who could throw the ball. I thought that was perfect for Dable. But the Jets to bring him in, I think the Jet offense could be pretty good next year. I'm I'm not
No,
a Jet hater.
no, and it seems like they're going kind of what you said, and they're going to be relying on their defense. And I mean, they still have some talent on there. Um, Hopefully Sauce Gardner can kind of come back to where he was when he was a rookie. They still have some weapons on. They still have on the defensive line some guys who can rush the passer. I know they lost Hassan Reddick. That was totally crazy. That was
Yeah.
dumpster fire of a trade. Um, but I think Aaron Glenn's got their thing. They're going to play tough defense and they're going to run the football, kind of like that old school mentality.
Rexy, sexy Rexy. Um, and then just quickly on the Giants, they've been all over the place. Outside last week, losing out on Stafford, they've been tied to Aaron Rodgers. I've seen reports for Kyler Murray. I've seen reports for Russ coming in for a meeting. I've seen reports for the fact that they like Cam Ward and want to trade up. I've seen reports for they would take Shedeur Sanders at 3. I've seen reports for possibly trading back and hoping to get Dart or going into the second round, you're picking somebody number 3 overall, and then taking Jaden Milrow in the second round. So it's literally been all over the place with the Giants, and the only thing they did was build up the secondary and bring back Darius Slayton, and bring out a couple bit piece linemen that they think might compete and give them depth on the offensive line. So not too much to even expect with the Giants. Listen, whether Rodgers comes or not, they have literally one of the 5 worst schedules next year. They are going to go from bad to worse. So I'm not expecting anything.
Yeah, it depends on. I know they mentioned a lot on the air on WFAN that is he going to get a quarterback that's going to save his job for this year, or is he going to get a young guy and maybe if he's not like could get fired after this year? That's been kind of been the talk. They obviously could go in a lot of different directions, and they could get a quarterback, but it depends on who they get a quarterback. And are they going to get the chance to develop that quarterback, or are they going to go with a veteran? I think they need to go young, and hopefully Mara gives Dayball the opportunity to at least give him a couple years to develop and see what he can do.
Yeah, and there's a reason why we spent 28 minutes almost on football in the off season because we really don't have much else. I really feel like we got a little bit check in with the Knicks and Nets, and just to check in with the Yankees just because of injury news. But let's go into basketball, I guess. Our account is fighting with people online about the Brooklyn Nets? Is that what? Did I hear that right?
So the Nets have lost 7 out of 8. So that's pretty bad, right? 1-7. That's pretty terrible. You would think the Nets are tanking. I mean, they don't need to tank because their roster is just that bad. But God forbid we win one game against the Lakers, and all of a sudden, the 10 net fans on Twitter are going crazy. Oh my God, we're not tanking. Oh my God, there's a whole thing on it. I don't want to go into it too much, but it's insane how much we can't even win one game. But whatever, we're still tied for 5th in the tankathon, so we're still for a 5th pick, a top 5 pick. We're scheduled for that. I'm okay with that. We're not tanking. We're just not good enough to win. We lost 7 out of 8. Let's move on.
I just thought it was funny. And then really quickly, the Knicks are the season 2-1 without Jalen Brunson, 1-1 on this current go round of no Jalen Brunson. And I mean, there's a little mix in the next 5 games. They play Portland, who I don't believe is that great. The Warriors, okay. The Heat, who shouldn't be that good, but I know they gave the Knicks all they can handle last time. Then you got the Spurs without Wemby. And you got the Hornets in that 5th game of the next 5. I mean, I'm not. I mean, even without Brunson, I expect him to go 3-2 in that 5. So I hope that I'm not being optimistic.
Looking at the standings, it really doesn't even. I mean, it matters, but it doesn't just because you're 5 up on the Bucks for that 4th spot, and you're 5 back at the Celtics for that 2nd spot with only 18 games left. So you're pretty entrenched unless you totally take some kind of downfall or some kind of
Yeah,
thing. You're going to be the 3rd seed, and the important thing is you need to get Brunson back as healthy as possible before the playoffs because there's really no. again, unless you guys somehow fall off the face of the earth, you're going to stay the 3rd seed, and you shouldn't be scared of anyone in the first round. The only one I would say maybe Detroit, just because of the unknown of them being there. Everyone else, you should be able to be in the first round. Make sure
Yeah.
Brunson's healthy. We don't need to talk about Bridges and his lazy.
Yeah,
So
we'll save
we can save
minutes.
that for next week if you want.
We'll save minutes, please, for next week. Real quick check in: the Devils are going to make the playoffs unless they crash. The Rangers are 2 points out; they could make it, and the Islanders aren't going to make it. So there's your hockey 10 seconds. And baseball wise, it's just a quick check in with the Mets. There's nothing really to report. Spring training is going on as planned. Evan Roberts is there telling you what the little brothers are doing down in Florida. And then we have the official word of Tommy John surgery for Mr. Derek Cole.
Yeah, the only thing Mets-wise, Francisco Alvarez, out for about 6 to 8 weeks, so he's out for at least June. And, of course, Garrett Cole with the devastating news that we kind of saw coming. You definitely saw it coming, definitely, with him being out for the year. It's going to be up to Will Warren as our 5th starter. And really, Clark Schmidt's going to be that guy that's going to be kind of to see, just because we have Rodon, who had a really good year. We hope at this point Fried's going to be the ace. Stroman's only going 5 innings to start. It's really going to be up to Schmidt. I know he was a little bit banged up during spring training, but to see if he can hopefully stay healthy and at least provide that
Yeah.
number 3 starter.
Hopefully we get a representative season from Rendon because I think last time I checked he was around a 8 to 10 ERA in spring training, and I know spring
Yeah.
is spring, but that worries me with him. With anybody else, it'd say, hey, the pitchers usually start better than the hitters, and he's got an 8 to 10 ERA. It doesn't sit well for somebody who has been very sketchy to say the least in pinstripes, but. Dan, that's all I want to bring up. I guess I'm going to wait. I had the Trevor Bauer question I wanted to ask you, but we are running short on time since I have a prior engagement for after our podcast tonight. So we'll save that for the next debate. Why don't you sign us off?
Yeah, all right. So keep following us, commenting on Instagram, X, YouTube, Facebook. Keep those follows up and those comments. I know people have been looking forward to our next podcast whenever we post it. So yeah, we'll do another trivia one. We have a couple of reels that we're kind of on the back burner that we're going to post very soon. And yeah, we'll keep doing our weekly podcast. We got March Madness, which is I think starting next Thursday.
I
So we got
started research.
so we actually have a lot to talk about next Wednesday. We can actually kind of preview March Madness and maybe give our final 4 picks. All right. So until next time, I'm Danny. This is Neil. Signing off.